What's up again, everybody? This is game number 2 of this Batman release Rainbow Draft. We rolled off. This is my good buddy Tyler. We rolled off, and I elected to go first. Actually, I think he won the roll off and elected to go second. So I'm going first, which means one of my dice goes to spent. I roll up my energy. This is a perfect roll for me. I've got 2 bolts and a question mark. The only thing that could have gone better is if I would have had a 4th die, and it would have come up as energy, because then I could buy a Firefly and then prep a die with the wonderful Villainous Pact Global. In any case, though, I think the best buy here would be one of those Firefly dice, as it does get that burn starting. So going to pick that up and pass over to my friend Tyler. He's going to draw his 4. He's going to re-roll the sidekick that came up, and it comes right back as a sidekick, which is actually not so good for him because he does have some 3-drops, but he doesn't really want to be buying the 3-drops. He's got some 4s that he wants to buy. Let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at his team here in a second. He's got, right now he's got a shield, a fist, and a mask. So let's see what he buys first. He could pick up the Talia al Ghul, but instead is going to buy a Batgirl. Here's his team. He's got a 2-cost Connor Kent. He's got a rare Batgirl. The 3-cost says it gets +1/+1 your other Bat character dice when it's fielded. He's got the wonderful Rip Hunter, the common version that allows you to just basically churn through your bag. Commissioner Gordon got a Talia al Ghul, the flip Talia, that 3-cost that has some interesting can't attack abilities, but it applies to you, which kind of stinks. Got the Batwoman there. That is actually a really strong card in draft. If you draft to find a Batwoman and use that, it's basically unblockable. And then he has the Hawk and Dove combo, which one's 4 and one's 5, so they're kind of expensive in draft, but their abilities are fairly strong, especially when put together, obviously. And the stat line on Dove is just insane. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any way to flip the attack and defense of her, so she's really kind of just a blocker. That's about it. But she can get buffed with Hawk on the field, and Hawk can get buffed by Dove if they're both on the field. So pretty cool. Moving into his actions, he brought Superhero Registration Act, which is a great one, obviously good ramp. And for his team, it makes sense because he's got some low-cost characters, but more mid-range characters on his team than I do. He's also got Hulk Out, which is just a great 2-cost purchase and can just act as energy, and it also has the added benefit of some nice overcrush. So moving on to my turn, number 2. I'm actually rolling 4 dice now, the remaining contents of my bag. I'm going to pay another 3 here. I rolled 4 energy of various types, so this would be the perfect time for me to just pay 3, pick up either a Huntress or a Firefly again, and use that other energy to prep a die from my bag, which would actually be from a used pile. So going to pay first so that that when I refill my bag with the stuff that's in my used pile, the Huntress that I purchased is actually going to go in as well. If I would have done that in the different order, then Huntress would be sitting in used right now, and I wouldn't see her for however long it would take me to burn through my bag. So this is good that I paid in that order and used the abilities in that order. So he's rolling up 4 energy, immediately picking up the Rip Hunter, which is exactly what he wants to do. He wants to get Rip Hunter out and just immediately go through his bag as quickly as possible. Choosing dice, getting rid of dice, getting exactly what he wants, and pressuring me early. That's his goal, I can imagine. I roll 2 characters here. Actually, they came up both energy faces, which is really poor. I'm also going to re-roll the sidekick because I need the energy to field if both of them came up, especially if both came up on their top faces. I would have had to pay exactly 3, which is what I have currently. But unfortunately, the Firefly did not come up, and so I'm just going to field that Huntress and buy some stuff. Now, Huntress's ability has to go off, so I have to KO his sidekick here whenever I field her, which is good for him, not so good for me, because it provides him a little bit of ramp. If I would have kept the sidekick on my side, I could have actually just KO'd my sidekick and re-rolled it next turn and had 5 dice next turn, but I didn't see that, or maybe it's misplay, maybe it's just a choice. Gonna pay 3 and pick up a Firefly, and I'm gonna prep yet another die from my bag. So my goal, again, is to just use that every turn. Going to ping out his sidekick there because I paid to field Huntress. My goal is to use that every turn and not have to buy ramp. I don't want to have to spend 4 energy and one of my turns picking up an SRA, even though it can speed up the process. If I'm using one of my energy every turn to pick up a not pick up an SRA, to pay the Villainous Pact Global, then I'm getting decent ramp the whole time. So my opponent has 6 energy. He could keep that 6 energy and pick up a Hawk. Looks like he's actually going to double buy, picking up an SRA, and I forgot what die that is. I think that's the... What die is that? I forget. A shield character, certainly. So starting my turn. Gonna roll up, and this is the second time that that Firefly has not come up. Definitely re-rolling that, and I can keep everything else here, and I don't need to really do any purchasing this turn. Not really bothering me that I'm not doing any purchasing because I'm going to pay to field. I probably want to keep that sidekick because it just gets it out of the bag, and again, getting stuff out of my bag is good. And there I have to pay 2, and then I have 1 energy to prep a die. So this is a perfect setup, perfect roll. Prepping over a Firefly. That's going to deal him 2 damage because it counts what's on the field. There are 2 bolt characters, so he goes to 18. Then I'm going to field that sidekick, and that's going to be my turn. No need to push, though I do have something like, what, 6, 7 damage on board. I could knock him down to 11. No need to do that. It's better to keep everything in the field. Now the argument then would be if I push with Firefly, then I can cycle it, and he would go down to 14. I'm doing a decent job of not overbuying and loading up the bag, but I still do have some sidekicks there. No push, and I think that's the right call. Wait for him to have something out on the field or to force me to KO. My next purchase is going to be a Huntress. It should be a Huntress. That's the goal. That's the game plan. So he rolls up his Rip Hunter. He's going to have the stuff that he needs to field it. Going to have the energy. He's also got a sidekick. I wonder if he wants to choose to keep that sidekick or re-roll it. Let's see what he chooses to do. He's scooping both a sidekick and 1 of his energy. Re-rolling both. Gets 2 more energy. He's going to need to use 1 of those energy to pay to field the Rip Hunter. So he's going to use the bolt to pay, and then is spending 2. Now he's going to prep 1, it looks like. He's prepping 1, and the shield there is going to burn. At least it's going to burn when his turn begins again, as per the rulebook. So I'm drawing 4, and there should actually not be anything else in my bag currently. So any purchases that happen now can get cycled into my bag if I use a Villainous Pact. 2 sidekicks, exactly what I need for the payment for Firefly. So this is going to deal him 3 damage now, dropping him to 15. 2 sidekicks can get fielded and get out of the bag, and then I'll have 5 that go into the bag next turn, and I'll be pulling 4, obviously. This is a great setup, and this is going very well on my end of things. Now his ramp begins, his bag churn begins, because he can now take out the first 4 that he chooses. Oh, that was Connor Kent, by the way, that die. He takes out 4, and he can choose now to toss any of those 4 and redraw, essentially, before rolling. So he's going to pop 2 sidekicks, and he pulled 2 sidekicks. I know one of those was from his prep. Doesn't really matter because, you know, he still had 1 sidekick remaining. So he's going to roll, and this is where things can get pretty cool for him. He has got an SRA, and he's got 2 characters, and the SRA does not come up, but the characters do. He's got the energy to pay for both characters because of that 2 generic, which is good for him. He's going to field those out, paying the appropriate costs. He's going to pay with the 2 generic, I believe. Question of payment. Let's see what he chooses to pay with. So right now I'm explaining that you can't split your energy and have 1 of your generic energy floating. You can't pay 1 generic of that 2 and float the other one. So he's just going to pay like that and pay 3 to pick up yet another one of those Batgirl dice. And chooses not to attack. Unfortunately for him, I have such a commanding control of the board. I can chump block with any sidekicks. I've got some characters I would prefer him to KO, so attacking is kind of a bad situation for him, but it's also one of those situations where he needs to attack, because all I'm going to do is keep working towards KOing my characters or pushing with my characters so that they cycle through the bag, and and just keep chipping him out. So he needs to do some sort of damage to me somehow. And if he doesn't, then he's just going to get burned. It's a hard team to play against. Mine is, I think. It's a hard team to play against when... Sorry. So here's an interesting fact. The dice that you pull and then prep, or I guess burn and then refill bag would actually float. I believe they go back into the bag. No, they stay in the use pile. Is a weird little ability in that you're not actually using those dice, and so they don't go to use. I think they go out of play, and so you don't have to refill your bag with those, or maybe you do. It's a confusing thing. And that's actually what we're having a conversation about right here. There is, however, a ruling on it. They ruled on it. I just forgot what they said. So if you go to the rules forum, the WizKids rules forum, they ruled on whether or not the dice that you decide to toss in favor of pulling new dice from your bag, if they go to used or if they go to out of play. I think the answer is out of play because they haven't been used, and so therefore they don't have to go back in when you refill the bag, which makes the ability better. He chooses to buy some of those Batgirl dice, or sorry, not Batgirl, Batwoman, which is really good for him because that character is unblockable, which is exactly what he needs to do damage to me because I have all the chump blockers. Here I have the nice ability of fielding a Huntress and KOing one of my Fireflies so that I can play it again next turn. I've also got 2 energy, which I could use to get a Hawk Girl, or I could spend 3 energy and pick up, anything else, like Red Hood. And Red Hood's not a bad situation here, but I'd prefer to keep the ramp going using Villainous Pact, so I'll do that first. And it's important here to do this first because if you field the Huntress first, then the Firefly goes to prep area and you can't use Villainous Pact because Villainous Pact explicitly states if nothing's in your prep area currently, then you can pay the mask. So have to pay the mask first there and then KO my own Firefly so that the 2 abilities don't conflict with each other. And it's at this moment where I just remembered that I was talking about something earlier and I forgot what I was talking about before I got cut off, before I cut myself off thinking about the Rip Hunter. Here's another option where I could attack, but not really necessary. Again, it's better to just have blockers in the field. With him picking up one of those Batwomen dice, it's actually probably considerable now to attack because he can just start pushing with those. Unfortunately for him, they're just going to cycle through his bag, but fortunately for him, he's got Rip Hunter, so he can basically just dig for them. Keep tossing all of his dice away, every Rip Hunter trigger, and look for that Batwoman. I'm going to pass, not attack here. He's going to draw 3, refill his bag, draw 1 more. Let's see which ones he wants to toss. I would toss the 2 sidekicks, because again, you're just digging for characters. And your hope, and that's fine. That's a fine pull because you're just going to go through those dice that much quicker. So he's going to keep a fist, going to reroll. Doesn't get the character doesn't get the SRA, which is really unlucky for him, sadly. So he's stuck with 4 energy, and he has to buy a fist character because he only rolled fists. So if he's got more Batgirl dice, he could pick up another one. He's going to pick up an SRA here, though. Just trying to maximize burning through that bag, churning through the bag, and getting his characters out. Which I think is a smart play, but unfortunately for him, he is on a clock. Because I'm just going to keep looking for those Firefly dice. Just going to field up all these crazy amounts of sidekicks. And again, I don't really need to buy anything here. I just kind of need to cycle my Firefly dice. So at this point, I'm actually looking to attack with the Huntresses. At least either the Huntresses or the Fireflies, because he can't really allow me to, and there's the field for that Firefly. He can't really allow me to push in unblocked, because it's just more damage. It's just speeding up the clock. And so he's going to have to either block and KO or block and return to the field, which is exactly what he should do, is block and find a way to turn those cards, those dice to the field, and not get cycled. With so few things in my bag, and actually here's an interesting mess up. So I only have 2 dice that are going to move from spent to used, and there's nothing in my bag currently. So I'm actually going to take some burn damage if he blocks correctly here. I have to push because the way that bag burn works in this is when you draw in Dice Masters is when you draw dice, you're supposed to draw 4 dice. If you can't draw 4 dice at the very beginning of your turn, then you take damage for each die that you can't draw. So if I only have 2 dice that I can draw from my used that go into my bag, if I can only draw 2 dice, then I'll take 2 damage, and I will get 2 generic energy. So I'm actually looking here to attack just to get some stuff into used. Just to get some stuff into use so that I don't take unnecessary damage. So I'm attacking with 3 sidekicks and 1 firefly. I know the firefly is going to get KO'd and sent back. That's the goal for him. If he KOs it and I said KOs and gets sent back, he's going to get blocked and get sent back. Oh, it looks like he's going to take the firefly attack. Very interesting. He's going to chump block the sidekicks, KOing those. So I'll take 1 burn damage next turn at the start of my turn. And I'll gain 1 generic energy. So my opponent picks up his 4 dice. He's got 3 sidekicks and 1 Batwoman. He's going to toss those 3 sidekicks, which is the right call. He's going to pull 3 more dice. He's going to roll up an SRA along with 2 sidekicks. Lands the SRA. Lands, I think that's a Batwoman as well. So that's the kind of roll that he needed a couple of turns ago. He's going to say 3 or 2. I'm going to say 3 because I don't feel threatened by him building a board. It's not too worrisome to me. Rolls up a Batgirl along with that Batwoman and a sidekick. It's going to pay to field both. And as of right now, I believe that Batwoman is unblockable. He's going to apply a Fist Global. Looks like it's... which one? Something. He's going to prep a die, definitely. Using the Villainous Pact. He's got a Fist to activate some global with. What he could do, and what I think not a lot of people see on this team, is he could pop the global off of Frontline onto some of my characters. If he stored up a bunch of Fists and then just said, I have to pay a bunch of life or these characters can't block, and then push with just a lot of his characters, then he can deal some guaranteed damage. And that is a calculated risk on my part of putting that onto my team because I know how much of an energy sink that would be to pull off. And so I don't think very many people, 1, would see it, and 2, would do it because you'd have to, dedicate a lot of energy to doing that. He recognizes at this point that he's at 8 and he needs to push with some attackers. So he's going to push and deal that damage from Batwoman because she is unblockable. He goes ahead and pushes that immediately. Taking things just a pinch out of order, but not... I mean, this is just a fun game. There's no huge prize on the line outside of a couple of nice promo cards. So we step back then, and we've played a lot, so we kind of know each other's thoughts and play styles. So now we step back to the correct attack step. He's going to push with the Batwoman. I'm going to take that direct damage, obviously. So we put that aside to work through it more easily. I will block with one of my Fireflies, and I will block with one of my Huntress dice. And again, here I'm trying to block to get my dice KO'd to re-roll them next turn. He's got a Fist in his reserve pool, which he can use to apply some sort of global. So my Huntress is going to KO. My Firefly is going to come back. I don't think there was a way there for me to have blocked with the Firefly and get it KO'd. I think both of those Batgirl dice were buffed, but not enough to KO the Firefly there. I'm going to take 2... Looks like. Maybe I took 1. Actually, I'm going to take however much from the Batwoman as well. I think that was like 5. So I roll up a ton of dice from the stuff that got KO'd and from everything else. I have a Firefly and I have a Huntress landed already. I'm going to want to re-roll that Firefly, definitely. I'm also going to think about re-rolling the Sidekick. No, but I keep the Sidekick. Don't land the Firefly, sadly. Or excuse me, that's a Hawk Girl sitting there. I'm going to pay the 1 generic that I get from the bag burn. And I'm going to field a Huntress and I'm going to KO. Using the Huntress's when fielded ability, I'm going to KO Connor Kent. And then I'm going to ping him for 4 damage from fielding that Firefly. At which point I'm just going to be able to push forward. He only has 3 blockers. He'll block the top 3, but I already have 4 sidekicks for damage right there, and that's going to be the game. So for me, these were some pretty optimal rolls, and I deliberately avoided buying things that I knew would not benefit my strategy. I avoided buying things that slowed me down and filled up my bag. My goal is to just stick a bunch of sidekicks out there, use them as chump blockers, get Huntresses and get Fireflies out there, use those as chump blockers when they're not being cycled to deal damage, and just slowly whittle away at my opponent. So that's game number 2. Game number 2 went fairly well for me. I landed some really great rolls on my end that were very lucky, but I also planned them out accordingly. So we will now jump into game number 3. As always, thanks for watching.